It is ours.
Judy Alvarez is a skilled braindance technician and a member of the Mox. She has her own apartment in northeastern Kabuki, Watson District. Judy is a possible romance option for V in Cyberpunk 2077.
Judy was born in Laguna Bend, a small town in the rural outskirts of Night City. Her father was never around and her mother died when she was just a child. She still has a photo of her but can barely remember her anymore. Judy was raised instead by her grandparents. Grandfather was a techie and taught her all that she knows. She also loved to hear the stories he told. Her grandmother was temperamental, something Judy herself seems to have inherited. While growing up in her hometown, Judy used to hang out with the other kids, sometimes playing street hockey on rollerblades or max tack and psychos, though they often mocked her for not having her parents around and being poor. She also liked to eat the burgers of Flo's Diner, the only eatery in her town. In 2057, Judy hid Jenny Chapman's doll, as she thought that only losers played with dolls. What Judy really wanted, though, was for Jenny to notice her, and she proposed to help her find the missing doll. In the end, neither of those things occurred.
Despite not being religious, Judy sometimes visited her town's church, a building she always thought looked old and out of place, simply because it was just there. Once, she sneaked inside of it when no one is around and stood at the altar, wondering what went through the priest's mind when he looked at the people, asking herself how he could read their minds and know everything about them. She then screamed at the top of her lungs to check the acoustics of the building, but when the echo returned, it scared her and she ran away. Judy thought it was all the guilt she felt for having a crush on Jenny, so when she screamed it out, it flew right back at her.
In the 2060s, so when the area of Laguna Bend was bought out by MC Dam Limited, sometime around 2062, the residents were forced to vacate as the corporation had plans to transform the region into a reservoir. Although there were protests in the months that followed, the residents were eventually outed from their homes. Judy and her grandparents moved into a rental apartment in Night City, but her grandparents hated the city and left around 2 years later. They moved further north to Oregon, while Judy stayed and made the apartment her own. When Judy was 16 years old, she was convicted and detained for stealing a fire truck and for illegal use of property belonging to the fire department. In reality, Judy did not steal the truck, but instead found it abandoned in a scrapyard. She decided to fix it up, which took her half a year, and then the police busted her on her first ride. They did not believe Judy and proceeded to detain her. Years later, Judy tried to get some kind of compensation for what she thought was an unlawful juvenile arrest. She contacted a lawyer in hopes she could help her win a compensation from the city council, but she dismissed Judy, stating it was something very difficult to achieve and not worth the trouble. Thinking that the woman didn't believe her either, Judy dropped the conversation.
So now we're reaching up into the 2070s. Judy worked as a technician at Clouds for a time. There she met Maiko Maeda, whom she soon entered into a relationship with. Judy also helped her girlfriend to jump up the ranks by tweaking the stats on her doll chip, not only to help her, but also hoping things would change for the better for both of them.
At some point, Judy left Clouds and found work at Lizzie's bar as a brain dance technician and editor, joining the Mox in the process. She thought they could improve the lives of the people in Night City for the better. Judy installed her equipment on the bar's basement on behalf of Susie Q, the Mox leader. It was at Lizzie's where Judy met Evelyn Parker, whom both would eventually become best friends. Sometime later, Evelyn left the Moxes and became a doll at Clouds, though Judy and her would still maintain contact with each other. Since Maiko's promotion, Judy's relationship with her had started to become more difficult, but still she visited her girlfriend at her office in Clouds whenever she could. Judy was jealous of how much time Maiko spent around other girls at Clouds, eventually commenting it with her, but got over it, hoping to spend some interesting time with Maiko later that day. First, though, Judy had to attend the anniversary of Lizzie Borden's death and the Mox's creation.
One day, when Judy was trying to get into Maiko's office, the security didn't let her in. After going home, Judy messaged her girlfriend and told her about it. Maiko tried to excuse herself by saying it was due to procedures, but Judy knew it was her call since the security had contacted her right before that. Maiko asked Judy to cool down, as this could mean trouble for her, stating she had to keep up some semblance of professionalism and didn't want to lose her position after how much she had endured to be there. This caused an argument between the two, in which Judy said that things were as bad as before, but not for Maiko, as she was doing just fine. Maiko responded that she was doing it for them both, that she was thinking about their future together, and didn't understand why that made Judy so angry. Judy realized that their perspectives on the world had changed, and she had been left behind. Maiko was just looking for more power, and Judy was ashamed she hadn't noticed sooner. Judy simply hoped that when Night City chewed up and spat out Maiko, she would still have something of her old self left. Sometime after the argument, Maiko asked Judy to give her some time to think about everything and to give herself time to cool down. But for Judy, it was 100% over.
Sometime after the argument, Judy asked Maiko to go to her apartment and take back her clothes, something Maiko didn't care about, and asked Judy to get rid of them. Despite this, Maiko wanted to go to Judy's apartment to talk things out, as she felt everything had escalated too quickly and maybe it was just a misunderstanding. Things didn't have to end that way, and at least not so sudden, but Judy didn't buy it. There was nothing else to talk about, and Maiko was doing what she always did, which was buttering her up with promises that she didn't actually want to keep. Judy said she would simply leave her clothes on the front of the apartment's door and would not open it if Maiko tried to knock. An angered Maiko answered Judy could toss her clothes out of the window if she wanted, as she didn't care and she wouldn't visit her. So back where we started at the start of this. Judy sarcastically replied it was nice that Maiko could afford to toss her clothes. If any of hers were on Maiko's place, she could leave them on the street for people who could need them. As for her ex-girlfriend's clothes, since they were dangerously expensive, Judy stated she would rather burn them.
After a long time since her talk, Evelyn contacted Judy asking if she was still cooped on Susie Q's basement, and if she was still dating Maiko. Judy told her one of those things was still true. Parker had messaged her because she needed help with a tiny but important favor. She needed to have a virtue scrolled and knew Judy was the best. In exchange, she promised her a life free of work where Judy could just focus on her art. Evelyn asked to at least meet and wondered where she could find her. Judy simply answered, in Susie Q's basement.
Sometime after Evelyn had explained what she needed from Judy, the two had some drinks at Lizzie's bar while waiting for Evelyn's contact to appear. Once they did, Judy finished her drink and went back to the basement. Later, Evelyn appeared with her contact and introduced V to her friend. Judy helped V to tune up for a brain dance and showed them how to edit it. Afterwards, they proceeded to scroll Evelyn's recording to find her and V's objective. Once done, Judy gave V the portable device they had used for the scrolling, as it already had V's profile and in case someone could trace its use to her. She also commented that whatever it was Evelyn and V were planning to do, it would kill them both, expressing she didn't want to have any trouble for helping them. Evelyn reassured Judy that there would be none.
So, as we said before at the start, Judy is a potential romance option for V in Cyberpunk 2077, but just to clarify, V needs to have a feminine body type and a female voice, so just a full-on female V.
I thought you only needed to have a female voice.
Yeah, I thought that was true as well, but maybe that's different to what I thought. I haven't actually done it, so I can't really say with 100% certainty. But yeah,
maybe that's a glitch.
Maybe.
There's enough others anyway.
Yeah, it definitely could be on the long list.
So anything from here on is pretty much down to choice. Like, there is almost nothing that you have to do in the game. Like, you don't have to do any of these things. I mean, you probably should do at least some of them, but you know, the Judy missions, if you like, they're not like vital to the main story post that initial meeting between V and Judy. So across some of the notable quests, though, both characters can become closer. Even if you're a male V, you can still become good friends of Judy, like a sister almost to you. V just needs to be understanding, basically, and help her when she needs it, but it is possible to refuse some of her propositions without any consequences. For example, it's not necessary to kill Woodman during the mission X Factor. Although why you wouldn't, I don't know.
Yeah, he deserves to die.
I know. I mean, either that or he goes to prison and make sure he drops the soap, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Eventually, so again, as you said, this is based on your choices in the game, but eventually V will be part of a plan to make Clouds independent from the Tiger Claws, which is a gang. During Pisces, the mission, when Maiko Maeda reveals her plans to the Tiger Claw's bosses, V has different options to deal with the outcome. To be able to romance Judy, V must follow their initial plan or agree with Maiko's scheme without later accepting her money. If V follows Judy's plan at the end of the quest, she will kiss V on the cheek, but this is not mandatory for a viable romance. If the quest ended with a good relationship between the two, some days later Judy will call V to meet at Laguna Bend, starting the quest Pyramid Song. At the lake, both will explore the underwater ruins of Judy's hometown. Once back on the surface, if V agrees to spend the night at the house, Judy will eventually lock herself up in the bathroom. After V enters and sits at her side, Judy will reveal how things ended up with Cloud and the dolls. If done right, Judy will say that she only wanted that day to be special for both of them. V can accept her advances, comfort her, or lean away. Choosing the comfort option, another opportunity will appear with the following dialogue. Afterwards, a cinematic will play with Judy and V having sex, basically. Next morning, V can find Judy on the pier outside the house. During the dialogue, Judy will ask what that night meant to V. The player can decide it meant the beginning of something amazing or just a pleasant distraction. The second option will make Judy angry and she will leave right away. She'll also remove V from her contacts sometime later and leave Night City. The first option will make both characters enter a romantic relationship. This option will also make Judy stay in Night City until V is done with her own business. Which is crazy, just noticing.
You cannot have her as a bit on the side.
Yeah, well, it's just crazy because with Panem, it's like really easy to get the romance, but it seems like there's a lot more hoops to jump through for like successfully romancing Judy, which is pretty crazy. That would be very easy to mess up on like a first playthrough, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. There's also a really interesting scene where you're a full-on male like V, and you can try and like absolutely advance on her, and she just full-on just gets annoyed.
Yeah, she shuts
like,
you down.
Dude, don't go there. Yeah, like she full. Yeah.
Okay. Is this a date?
You're not my type, Holmes. Just show up. I'll see you there.
Not worried I'll just sink to the bottom like a bag of rocks?
50-50 chance, I guess. Willing to risk it for the footage.
Look pretty damn fine in that wetsuit.
Don't go there, dude.
That in itself could have made a bloody Cyberpunk movie, to be honest.
Yeah.
After V answers Elizabeth's call and accepts her job, the next time V calls Judy, she will inquire about the job. Depending on how far in that quest you are, V can tell her about it. And I actually get that really dialogue when it came through, which was really awesome.
That's really
cool. We've talked quite a lot. That's pretty much it, what we've got for Judy. She's a pretty cool character. Like, to meet her quite early, along with Evelyn, two of the kind of earliest characters along with Jackie, and obviously there was a fixer that you met before that and a bartender, but basically those are the first like three characters that you really come across. I think there's Dex as well, but I do think that both we've done a video on Evelyn and Judy are really cool like early characters to meet.
Yeah. Really
fit sort of the cyberpunk theme and genre, and I did find that like even from the first meeting I was as a male V, like I probably, if she was an available romance for a male V, I would have probably given it a try, to be honest.
Yeah, 100%. And she definitely seems to have quite a lot of like expansive backstory comparatively to some of the other cyberpunk characters. Like even just comparing her like the amount of lore that Judy has in her backstory compared to like say Panam or some of the other characters, it's definitely clear that CD Projekt Red put a lot of effort into Judy as a character, and especially like her story and what leads her up to the point of the game in 2077. So I think that's really cool, and it's always interesting to have somebody that's properly fleshed out like that.
She's after sort of V and Johnny. Judy's kind of like the cover character almost of the game. Like you have V on obviously the cover art. You have Johnny as like a main character, and then I think it's Judy, to be honest.
Yeah.
As a face of the game, and you know, so she's honestly a really cool character. I think, you know, obviously everyone has their own preferences. I do think, as I said, if she had been, I would have gone down a romance, because I did feel there is a connection between the two. Like they connected over something pretty deep, like Evelyn Parker's disappearance and subsequent suicide. And they kind of connected over trying to help, or at least if you play it that way, over trying to help the rest of the sort of dolls in Clouds. It's pretty deep, and then the moment where she takes you to her kind of hometown that's underwater is quite like this is me, like I'm letting you in now almost. And it was like, it's great. And even the playthrough that I had, like, it was something bittersweet but lovely about having her as like a good friend that would call from like Oregon, sometimes, and let you stay in her apartment once she'd left the city. I really liked that.
Yeah, like she's always cool, like as a character, even if you're not like trying to romance her, which I think is pretty good, because definitely sometimes like those types of characters get hard, like I guess shoehorned into just being like the romance option. But I feel like Judy can still be like a really good
so deeper. Yeah. Agreed. Even Panam, like we did a video obviously on her as well. Even Panam, like as the other sort of main level, high level. I mean, there's two other romance options in game, like as a high level, as opposed to just like a hookup option, like Meredith Stout or whatever. But even Panam, like she's not quite as in depth as this. There is a bit, and she's a bit more than that. But like, it doesn't make sense to me how you like. It doesn't. I don't see how you can sort of just be friends with Panam rather than romance if you're going to go down that path. Whereas Judy, like, works very well as both.
Yeah, for sure. But I think with that, we pretty much have all of the lore available about Judy. Definitely one of the better characters in Cyberpunk, and I'd love to hear anybody in the comments who has an opinion on her to let us know, because I'm sure there's a bunch of cool like moments in dialogue that you can get under specific circumstances, even like that one we just mentioned before on the phone call where she refers you for the work and then asks you about it if you've done some of that mission already. It's pretty in-depth stuff, so it'd be pretty awesome to hear if there's more things like that. So let us know in the comments below, but otherwise we'll see you guys in the next lore video.
See you.
Hey V, I'm calling to say goodbye. I finally decided to up and leave this city for good. Realize this place only gives you two choices. You either become an asshole, or eventually you get off by one. I hope you somehow find an alternative. Just a shame things had to end this way. Have a nice life.